This is a Hero's Journey podcast, and this episode is brought to you by SMP Inc., JPS Computers, and a shout out to the Rock Rage Radio listeners out there. As they say, we are everywhere. Chase, this is part 2 with my boy, Scott Hartmann. This guy is like a brother to me, and we're going to get right into it. Scott is a teacher at the New York Film Academy. He's my childhood friend, so we go way back, and it's kind of wild because we sat up last night until about 2 in the morning when he drove in from LA, and we talked. And I wish that we would have had a camera and just could have been able to take segments because there were tears involved. There was a whole lot of laughter and a whole bunch of stories because we have a ton of them.
Yeah, at this point, I just need to follow you around with the camera.
Dude, it's insane. Yeah, and the thing is, like, I don't ever want to interrupt your thoughts. We're going to get right into it because actually we on the last episode, we ended with you getting accepted to Chapman, which is one of the top film schools in the country. It is. And I remember this part of the journey because you came from Salem, Oregon, out to LA. To follow my coattails. Yeah. and just kidding.
I'm still waiting for that to pay off.
Hey, we are working on something together.
That's the interesting thing is this sort of ends. Here's a little foreshadowing is like, now what's amazing is we're at this place that we, with our experience and our skill set and the rest of it, now we're looking at collaborating on stuff.
Exactly.
And it's beautiful and exciting and, and less panderous. We're not doing this because we want to, be famous or walk red carpets. Exactly. It's like, I got this story, man. Like, I think this would be really cool. And, and you're like, oh, we could do it. And like, that's, it's wonderful to be at that place now.
Yeah. We'll get into that. So right now we're back to, if you saw part 1, then you saw Scott, you're listening to Scott tell this story on how you were an awful student who became a really solid student, graduated with honors.
I was a great student.
Yeah, there you go.
When I was in Chapman, I got 2 A-minuses, and I'm still pissed off.
Oh, I'm talking about, we didn't get to that point yet, but when you were with Southern Oregon, throwing hammers.
It was bad.
Yeah, but, and how you built that up. Yeah. Because I know that when I was in college, I majored in ping pong and pool.
Yeah, buddy.
And I did not buy a book.
No,
I took my money that they gave me in scholarship for playing baseball, and they gave me these waivers to buy.
So you cut the sleeves off your shirts. That's what you bought, scissors. So Chase, I just want you to know, this dude walked around with, sleeveless shirts for the longest time. And listen, if anybody wants to reach out to me, please do. Because if you want to know stories about this guy, they'd be like, don't tell. Don't. I'm the guy. I'm that guy.
You and my mom.
And plus, much like your mother, I'm more than happy to share.
No, my mom's willing to do it for a price.
Yeah.
I
don't know. I could hand her a beer and there's no money involved. So,
I'm in high school and I get woke up my senior year because I used to carry around a baseball in high school.
Yeah.
Chase, literally, dude, I carry around a baseball my senior year. And this thing started white and it was dirty. I get woke up by my brother because I'm the guy who doesn't go to class or got to sit in the back of class and wear headphones. And I say this on game day, kind of thing. And my brother wakes me up and he goes, hey, sign this ball. I'm like, that's my ball. He goes, I know, I got it out of your locker. Right. And I'm like, how did you know my combo? Like, literally, but that's my brother. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And he goes, sign the ball. I'm selling it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? He goes, there's a girls' school. I'm selling it. But what I'm saying, no joke. My brother, he's like, you're not going to school anyway. Like, you don't need it. You got enough baseballs.
That was back in the 2 alarm days, right? Where you had to have 2 different alarm setups so that either one of you could possibly maybe wake up.
Yeah, exactly. So, but anyway, so back to right now, Scotty, you just get accepted to Chapman, and we had a conversation last night that because to graduate from school, you had to make a movie.
Yeah.
And we want to get into that because you made a movie called Mascots, which is, can we see it? Is there a place that you can go?
Yeah, actually, Mascots is on, it's free, available on YouTube. So.
And it was your first film, first.
Right. No, it was certainly the most substantial thing I'd done up to that time.
Yeah.
And, you know, the culmination of graduate school experience and the rest of it, you know, my grad thesis. And plus it was, you know, because I'm an enrolled member of the Eastern Shawnee Tribe of Oklahoma, but that's not something I necessarily grew up with. My native experience comes with Uncle Gary and you and the barbecue and the family and the rest of that.
Yes.
And so that was an interesting part of it and a big thematic in the story, which is about, you know, somebody kind of proving his nativeness in spite of the fact that he doesn't, you know, he's not certain about it and all that. And so that was a big part of what that movie was for me. It was an expression of taking the skill set, but also telling something I wanted to talk about.
Well, and growing up, you grew up around us, and we were very proud of who we are. You know, Native American Indian. My dad is a big old Indian with long silver hair to this day. But here's the thing. I remember the day that you got a hold of me and said, hey man, I have a sister that I didn't know about. My dad, I didn't know because you have a dad. Your dad raised you, but this is your biological father who today we get the news and a message that he's on hospice care. And it's a time in our life that I'm sorry you have to go through this. I know you don't know your biological father that well, but he gave you something. It was like a gift. Like, hey, you said, I'm like you. I am family. And we're like, you were always family. Yeah. You weren't blood, but you were a big brother to me. Yeah. So, and then you actually got to touch on the fact that like you were Native American Indian as well.
You know, it was interesting too, because I remember talking to Uncle Gary in the basement, you know, one of those everybody's hanging out things. And, you know, we were chatting about, you know, the native stuff and he looked me dead in the eye. And I mean, he, you know, even there was no laugh or nothing because there wasn't any of that follow up kind of thing. You know, he looked at me, he goes, no, you got it. It's in you. And I was like, oh, okay, you know, like that. I took it with a grain of salt, but he looked me dead. I mean, he looked right through me and said that there was there. I was like, oh, that's cool. It's interesting. And it's interesting. That's part of with particularly, you know, Native Americans in the United States, because it's been so fractured, you know, one of the least represented minorities in all of media, right? You know, families have been broken up, oppressed. I mean, right now, Navajo Nation still doesn't have water. I mean, it's insane, right? And people don't talk about it nor care because there aren't enough people in spite of the fact of the history and the rest of it. And it's gaining relevance and prevalence in the, you know, in media and the rest of it. And, you know, but it's taken forever, you know, and so there hasn't been a lot of people that have been able to stand up, because here's how horrific it is to me. And I think the best example that shows how poorly natives have been represented is, you know, arguably the most famous Native American actor is a guy named Iron Eyes Cody, who did that famous public service announcement, rowing the canoe. He turns around and get the tear in his eye. He's arguably the most famous Native American actor. You could, you know, Wes Studi, you know, been, you know, up for an Oscar, you know, Graham Greene. There's some great, Adam Beach is amazing, you know, wonderful dude, you know.
Yeah, Zahn, you remember Zahn? Zahn is now coming up. Oh, Zahn lived in our neighborhood.
His breakthrough and where he's at now.
He stuck it. He just stayed in there, man. Like he was the guy I was in those rooms with. Yeah. You know, I know you're on a thought. Yeah. But I don't want to get from Uncle Gary because I want to share something. Yeah. And it goes back to Uncle Gary was on his last days. Yeah. We knew that he was going. And he calls me and said, I want 24 hours with you. And it'll just be ours. So I bought a ticket from LA, from, you know, back when we were living together. And I flew home. Yeah, I remember. And he shows up and we stayed up for 24 hours and he shared stories with me. He shared stories with me about my dad, about my mom, childhood, things I did not know. As an elder, he felt like, I need to share this with you. I need to share these moments with you, because he wasn't going to be an elder. He's only in his 40s, but he was elder to me. And so he shared these things, which are very important, right? And they stuck with me. And it was, I wrote a song called Red, I See Red, which was him sitting in front of me. But we did crazy things. We went to bars. We went from bar to bar. I don't drink. And he couldn't drink because he was dying of cirrhosis of the liver. We did karaoke. We did stupid stuff. We went and hung out with the girls. Like were calling me, hey, what you doing? Hanging out with my uncle. Bring him. Yeah. But we just stayed up for 24 hours. Then flash forward. He gave me something that 24 hours that I'll never forget. Mm-hmm. I walked into your house just after COVID. I had made you a choker.
Yeah.
And I'm staring at this choker that I made you so many years ago.
Yep.
And I'm like, wow, that was one of my favorite pieces. Like, wow. I remember making that for you. And you said, no, you made it for you. And you gave it back to me. And that is our way.
Yeah.
That is the way of us. That's the way of our people. That is the way my mom does that. My dad does that.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
you,
Always.
right then, that moment, that was another moment that will always stay with me.
Right. But also to clarify that moment too, it was interesting too, because you did the natural thing. We're like, nah, dude, I can't. And I just looked at you and go, come on. And you went, and right away, all the subtext was clear, and you already knew the kind. He goes, all right, no, I know I can't come into your home and not accept the gift.
Exactly.
And I was like, cool, we're on the same page. And the conversation was over, and you took it back.
Yeah,
and
done.
It was the way it needed to be.
Yeah.
That's it.
And so it's in you. It's who we are. It's how we've been raised.
Yeah.
And the day that you were gifted that from your father is, it was just, all it did was just solidify. It is in me. The blood is in me. So you made this movie, and I cut you off unless you want to finish that thought.
Well, I was going to...
because we were talking about actors and Zahn and everyone.
Well, because as I was getting back to it, saying that arguably the most famous representative of Native is Iron Eyes Cody, 100% Italian.
I know.
The most famous Native American actor is 100%. That's how poorly Natives have been represented. But now you have like Reservation Dogs, and Sterling Harjo is doing an amazing job as a director. There's a lot of. I got a chance to work with Misty Upham, who was in. She was in Frozen River and co-starred with Melissa Leo, and and that was one of my beautiful conversations with her. Was the intention was not to. Now, I never thought of myself being in the forefront. I've always saw myself as like, I can't be in the front of this, right? I'm mixed, and I've powwowed and done that stuff and have family and the rest of it. I'm enrolled and I'm grateful for all that, but I'm a support guy. I got to be there to help push somebody else. And in my mind, like Misty, it was an opportunity to work with her. And the thing that was amazing about it was that she wasn't just a Native actress, she was a great actress.
Right.
And I used to refer to her as my brown Ferrari, because we'd be rehearsing and it was fine. She was doing okay. But then as soon as that film ran through the camera, man, fifth gear, and she had another level to it. And that was amazing. She wasn't just being a Native actress, she was a great actress.
Wow.
And
she stars in Mascots?
Yeah, she was definitely a big part of Mascots. And
something hit me right now. You said Adam Beach.
Yeah.
I remember
after school special.
After school special we did together, all of us. I almost got the lead in that.
Yes.
It scared Adam because he got called down there. The director was like, "No, I got a new guy." And so the producers bring down, and we're back and forth against me and Adam, and he's like, "I already had this part." Like
that because I was on set with you right? And because they were looking for extras and stuff, and I showed up in my flannel, which is the thing of the time. But to me, that whole thing was about watching that drum practice.
Tears. Because I was in tears.
We walked into that space, and they were up on the stage in a multi-purpose room, and they're singing, and that drumming filled the space. We walked in through the double doors and got right to that open space, and we both just stood there and wept. It was beautiful and profound, and just
I remember that moment.
And still now, man,
it stays with me.
Drums, man, and it's like, man, it hits your heart. You feel it. There's a connection, and like that to me, that's what I remember about that set was that moment. It was so profound, and it just for me was, and again, not proof to anybody else. This was for me because I felt it and I knew it. And I'm like, man, here it's in my heart,
Right.
And that was part of, part of a connection that that was, that was poignant for me, that shaped how I think about things and what's important to me and what I want to do and how I want to approach it, and to be a part of, not necessarily getting everybody to change their mind or see something, but to be able to have an impact on the people I do talk to in the circle of the world I live. When I deal with my students, this is the way I can infuse, here's my perspective and my experience and the rest of it. Some of that, circling back, is talking about, and this is what I think makes me, arguably a better teacher, is that I have the empathy to recognize the experience of the challenge of trying to make a movie in grad school, and the struggles, because I went through that. I had a very difficult time getting mascots made, because this is just part of the business, as it were, that even in film school, this can happen. There can be tribalism, there can be, arrogance and entitlement and those kinds of things, or high school cliquey kind of stuff.
Right.
And, and I'm profoundly grateful for the challenges I faced, because those are the things that made me stronger and more capable of managing stuff, so, I wasn't able to get the crew I really wanted, that just wasn't available to me. I felt like I had a really strong story that was, I had something I wanted to say, which was pointed out to me by my mentors. And I got a great cast. I got some amazing people to act in this film, and I was excited about going to make it. But, and this happens in production sometimes, where like everything works against you,
right?
Everything works against you. And, and so, and sort of surmise it, I can't even get people to understand the grind and the effort and the struggle that left me feeling isolated and overwhelmed. But I was so set on, getting this movie made and articulated the way I had it set in my head, in spite of other people's efforts, in spite of other people's ambivalence, in spite of people's lack of interest, And it was funny because I also became isolated because the rumor was that I had a train wreck of a movie. It was going to be really bad. And so people who are, acquaintances and friends had just stopped talking to me.
Including your mentor.
Yeah.
I remember
that was, for me, and it was very important that, the guy who's the director of the school, this guy named Deju, best story guy I've ever seen. I mean, he was extraordinary, right? And he was an old school film school guy. In his mind, if he didn't leave a mark, he wasn't teaching you anything. If he didn't cause you some sort of pain, you weren't going to remember stuff. And he took a level of like sinister pride in that, I suppose, because I told him at one time, like, he gave me notes on another short film I made, and it hurt. And I told him, yeah, I'm still sort of licking my wounds. And he laughed at me and patted me on the back, and just sort of, but, you sort of alluded to is that, in the midst of the struggle and trying to get the movie to work, feeling zero support, no one's thinking that I'm going to make a movie that's worth anything. All that was present for me. That was exactly my experience. I had an editor who wasn't particularly good, but she made up for it by being slow and ambivalent. And, but I took on the idea that I'm going to do this the right way. I'm not going to take the edit from her. I'm going to make sure that I communicate with her. I'm going to learn my job as a director to talk to an editor. And I bought into all that, so I wouldn't break the rules,
Right.
And I watched many of my contemporaries more than happily just go, I don't care. I want to make my movie. I'm going to do that. And I went, nope, here are the guidelines. And and I knew that, I can break the rules later. I can, not get permits. I can do all those things, down the road, you run and gun sort of stuff. But how do I get the discipline and still be able to go execute the movie, which is more about how you do it in the business anyway.
Right.
And so, I get the awful phone call from the secretary, from the director's office saying he'd like to meet with you now.
Right.
And so I'm like, oh man, and my anxiety's off the chart. I'm kind of depressed. I'm exhausted. All that's normal part of production, and particularly post. If you don't sleep on an editing suite, you haven't really edited a movie, kind of thing. And I went in, and he's like, hey, big guy, sit down. And he was like, listen, you're a grown up, so I'm going to talk to you like a grown up. He goes, movie's not good. You know, I'm just telling you, you're a great writer. So just finish it up, graduate, and go write, you know? And so I think he was thinking about it as like, here's your positive turn. Here's what's good about it. And I'm just sitting there so deflated. And, you know, and here's a guy who, what he said meant a ton to me. And he's basically telling me that it's as much of a failure as the rumors had it. And I went, okay. And I took it. And then I went, and you know me. No,
exactly.
I ain't done.
Yep, exactly.
I ain't done. And so, and of course, the depression and the isolation and all that continued, the fight to get the edit together, all that. And, you know, and I just kept just one tiny step against the storm at a time to get to the end of it. And finally, you know, I got another one of those calls. Nothing's going my way particularly. All I'm focused on is getting that movie where I think it should be. And I get another phone call. Deji would like to have you in his office right now. So I'm like, great. Now I got to go up to the 3rd floor again. And I'm like, at this point, I told you last night, man, if he says the same thing to me, I'm just going to break down in tears. I'm going to fall apart right now. I can't handle somebody crapping on me right now. I'm a delicate flower. And
6'4".
Yeah, 6'4", 300-pound delicate flower. But you know, artists are sensitive, and and I've always been known as being a sensitive guy anyway. And so I went in, same thing. Hey, big guy, sit down. And he moves around his desk. And I remember it felt so slow, that move for him to go to sit at his desk and sit down. And I'm already trying to pre-imagine the terrible things he's going to tell me about this new version of my movie. And he goes, well, I don't know how you did it, but you proved me wrong. You made a great little movie. And
That's
I was
amazing.
like, what?
That's amazing.
And because I slumped in my chair, and now I'm like, oh, wait, what?
Yeah.
What? I'm leaning in to listen to it. And it wasn't just patronizing, because he started breaking it down, because what you did here and how you adjusted that and how you put this scene and like the pacing here and that ending. Oh man, you know, like, and he says to me 2 things that stuck with me. One was, I don't know how you did it, because to make a good movie, just a good movie, you need a great script, right? You're never going to make a good movie from a mediocre script. It never happens. It's not possible. If you're a shitty storyteller, I don't care how good your camera is, you're not making a good movie. Second thing he said, you need to have great actors. You had really good actors. And he goes, and then you need a great crew. And he goes, now I don't know what the fuck happened.
Right.
And I went, yeah, okay, you know. He goes, but, and here's the second part he took away, but you have like, and he held his fist up to me, you have this steel wheel. And I went, and he goes, and you kept pushing forward. You got to keep doing that. And I was like, that's a great lesson in it, you know, in the midst of it, you know.
Right.
And objectively, I knew it was all going to pass. Life brings those ebbs and flows. There's awful times. And one of the few things I actually have deep faith about as a guy who deals with depression and anxiety and those kinds of things is the one thing that I'm conscious of is in the midst of those low points where you're on the low end of the roller coaster ride and you're in the fog and you feel awful and you see no possibility, no light, no hope. The one thing I've gotten faith in is it'll pass. You know why? Because it's always passed.
Right.
Eventually there'll be the other side of it. And so, you know, that was one of the things that I'm like, oh, I know that I'm going to feel better later. So while I'm in the middle of dealing with this during grad school and, you know, and putting all the effort in and really in earnest trying to learn and develop and get better at it and pick the brains of everybody I could, you know, anybody I could, you know, sit in an office with, you know, I'm going to go learn from them and, you know, try to, you know, fold that into how I approach things and what I do and the rest of it. And so, and it turned out, and you were there. You were one of the few people who came and supported me when
it was awesome.
When it was screening, and there was like 500 people there.
It was incredible.
And I, you know, and again, contextualizing it, people were still of the mind that this movie was going to be bad.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the talk and the rest of it. And it could not have been a better night.
It was amazing. It was a great night.
Amazing.
It really was.
And you were amazing too, because, you know, I've been to a million of your shows and I've always been able to be a good guy to step back and let you take the adulation and the rest of it. And in the midst of this, I sort of was being humble and, you know, a little overwhelmed too. But it was such a flip from where I'd been even the day before to now where people are going, dude, that was amazing. They're so wound up and excited about it. And one of my favorite bits is one of my mentors in grad school is a guy named David Ward. And David Ward wrote The Sting, won an Oscar for that.
Right.
He, wrote and directed Major League, just for a couple examples, right? And I'd go sit in his office and we chat about stuff, just talk, he was a good guy. And one of my favorite moments from that night, and you were standing next to me, is it's packed rotunda, everybody's in there, and 5 movies showed that night, so families and students are all mulling around.
Right.
And he had to work his way through the crowd to get to me, and he comes to me and he goes, listen, I had to come talk to you. He goes, you got me to cry at the end of that movie. He goes, I've seen thousands of short films, man, and you got me.
That's awesome.
I was like, that felt like a win to me. It
was a huge win.
It was wonderful.
Huge win. And that's what that's about.
And the movie went off to win awards at festivals, and and it was good, and it was particularly good, reflective of where I was at that time.
Exactly.
And I'm happy with it.
You did a great job, and you had not a lot to work with.
Yeah.
It was a challenge.
Yeah.
But again, we are 2 guys sitting by the pool.
Yeah.
Again, back at the pool, and sitting there talking about stories and stories being told. So now you I don't mean to fast forward you here, but you leave Chapman, you get a job. You're at the New York Film Academy, or
I think this is particularly relevant to the whole hero's journey concept too, is because I always, like, my grandparents on my dad's side all taught. They were teachers. They retired as teachers. And my grandmother a long time ago said, "You're going to be a teacher." Oh wow! And I was like, "Nah, I'm going to, I don't know, what I kind of,
Right.
I went to grad school always of the assumption I was going to go teach. Listen, I look, I see how the business is
from
run.
A guy who was a bad student is now going to go teach.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so, but at this point, there's a different idea, because you evolve and change and the rest of it. So I knew the teaching was going to be a big part of it. I like it. I like that interaction. I'm good at that part of it. So I had to get the craft level of being able to, how to put together a movie. And then I went, and my first job out of grad school, like many people, was I was cleaning whiteboards and moving chairs around, and it was as humbling an experience as I had. And I was pissed off and I was miserable, but I'm like, nope, I'm gonna pay whatever dues I have to get where I need to be. And then as soon as an opportunity avails itself, I'm gonna jump on it. So I went, and I was, barely getting by, but I had a very specific intention, like a character in a story. And I relate a lot of my life and everything I've learned based on narrative story, because you want a character in a narrative story to have a very specific goal, the thing they're aiming for, not a nebulous, like, I'm looking for love, but I want to marry her. Right? That kind of thing. And I knew that I wanted to teach, and I wanted that, and my design has always been, I want to get to be able to teach so that I can make what I want to make. I can go do the projects I want to do and create the stuff I want to do. And I don't need a marketing department telling me, what you need? A cane. I don't have to have that be a part of, my dynamic. And the world has grown to fit me better in that regard, because now you can do production on cell phones, look better than the stuff I shot in the 90s.
Right. Yeah.
And also you can distribute it to the entire planet now.
Right.
You don't have to be in Hollywood necessarily to, it's a great place to learn. Listen, they've been doing it for 100 years and they do it better than anybody on the planet necessarily. But once you learn it, you can take it wherever you want now, And so I had to do the grind of, a humbling year or so of struggle, and it was, and I've got my master's degree, and I'm cleaning whiteboards, and it was awful. I hated it, but I had intention, and I was going to get, and so then I get the opportunity to teach, and then I started, and there's levels to this, as we talk about in any craft, musicianship, all that. And, and the way I try to explain it to people is like, I was a pretty good filmmaker when I went to Chapman. I came out way better. That filmmaker was substantially better than the one who went in. But then there's an adage, and I always screw this up as I explain it, but there's an idea that if you want to learn something, you read about it. If you want to get better at it, spend time. And if you want to master it, teach it.
Right.
Man, my game, because I literally spend every day breaking down story, giving notes on how to approach story. So not only do I have to understand how to do it and to be able to make it and direct it and understand the craft of that, but then I also have to be able to communicate it to a student so that they can go apply that and do that. And because of all that, like, what I'm capable of doing now is just another level.
It's incredible to see, and you got to go. You were living in Abu Dhabi for a while, teaching filmmaking.
Yeah, I've taught filmmaking in Paris. I ran a program, for a couple summers in Paris at La Famise Film School through the New York Film Academy. Yeah. That was amazing. So my travels. Then I was also in the Middle East for 3 years. And it's funny because that traveling was so eye opening, and and it was extraordinary. I had amazing students there. It was lovely. I had a wonderful experience in the Emirates, and again, all the while getting more formidable at teaching, but also, and this is something that, people sort of assume that, you're teaching so that you're not thinking about other stuff, but I was also making stuff along the way. And here's where athletics is always applied. Like, I don't necessarily need to be able to go compete in a match or necessarily making a big full production, but I'm working out the whole time. I've been making stuff and writing this whole time. And, in addition to the teaching, all in a funny way to sort of culminate with, like I'm happy. I'm happy with my students. I'm happy with my improvement as a teacher. I'm happy with my life. It's allowed me to take on the opportunity of learning how to play guitar only in the last couple of years. Right. All that shaped me and made me more prepared for kind of where I'm at now, which seems to be, at least at this point, culminating with us looking to partner on making a feature and putting that together, and it's exciting to think that could come together.
We have to close that chapter, though. We have that chapter is there. Yeah. We have to close that. Yeah. It's because there is a moment, and that's what this is about. Yeah. This is, for us, we get one go around, and we were supposed to be doing something like this. Yeah. And with my resources, your resources, me as an actor, I get to do this again and get into acting again, combining music and a phone conversation and your ability to tell stories. Yeah. And now it's time, and I'm putting it on you. Yeah. This is good. This is a Chase. We are making a movie. Scott and I, he is 70 some pages into this. The ending, you told me the ending last night. It gave me chills. He's got to finish writing this movie, and we're actually going to make this film. We're going to make a feature film. We're going to pull all the resources and put them together and make this happen. Before, we're going to call my mom real quick. But before we do that, you teach at the New York Film Academy. Is there? I've heard so many stories of the students and whatnot come into your school and whatnot. But if there's somebody sitting out there in Ohio, Iowa, what advice do you have for them? Because we've heard your journey on part one and now part two,
which is my own story.
It's your unique story, exactly.
Absolutely. It's not necessarily the right way to do it. But
it's not, but you made it when it was impossible. Yeah, like that is not something. A bad student is now a teacher, and you took the ability of being an athlete, your roots, and then finding out who you are as a person. Like deep down, and then taking and creating this new you. Yeah. And this person that you knew, that you went from not being the dude who's just going to be 300 pounds flipping his channel, just retiring in life. This is what I'm going to do. Yeah. Live for work at the state, blah, blah, blah. Here you are. Now you're helping people shape themselves, tell stories. You told me last night you have students that have went on to win awards and things like that in filmmaking. So if there's anybody out there, what do you say before we call my mom? Because we only have a few minutes left.
No, I mean, the short answer is, and here's the secret to it all, is that, I've met some amazingly talented people. We certainly have in LA in that time. And, and we've met people who have amazing ideas, really wonderful ideas. But here's the reality of it. If you're not willing to do the work, it doesn't matter.
Right.
They have no value without doing the work. And so that's about it. That's, go to work, educate yourself, be informed about what you're doing, but go do that. It's not a microwave. You can't, put a camera in the microwave and it becomes a better camera kind of thing. You can't put a screenplay in there. You can't push a button and all of a sudden it becomes better. You got to do the work. You got to be willing to do the grind on it. And often the thing that brings people to LA, for example, is I'm going to be on the cover of People magazine and I'm going to make a bunch of money and I'm going to walk red carpets. And that might and I would argue most people who move there, that's their motivation. You know who sticks around and becomes successful? The ones who are willing to do the work.
Zahn, it comes to mind. That's somebody who was driving his beat up car in our neighborhood. Man. And now he's got his own show, Reservation Dogs from that is doing great things. Yeah. I'm proud of you, dude. Thanks, You're killing it. And Adam Beach, grinding it out and whatnot. Yeah. We're going to call my mom real quick.
Cool.
And
well, I must say hi to my mom as well.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And family.
Yeah.
Friends.
There you go. So,
yes.
Mom.
Hello.
Hello. So you're on a Hero's Journey podcast. We did a little flashback right now. I've got Big Scott is in the room. Blotto, Scott Hartmann, my boy. Yeah. I'm going to pass the phone along. And hold on a second, Mom, okay?
Okay. Hi, guys.
Hey there.
Hey, big guy.
How are you?
Just fine. How are you?
I'm doing terrific. I like the yard work stuff, by the way.
I know. Isn't that cool?
Amazing.
You always comment on it. When I post it, I go, I wonder if Scott's going to see this.
Oh, hell, Scott sees it for sure.
You know.
Yeah. Hey, I got your package too. Thank you much. Appreciate that.
Yes. You're much welcome. I just enjoy hearing your voice.
Oh, I appreciate that. It's funny because Brian and I were talking last night that pretty easily we could have just had picked up the phone to the beginning of the podcast and let you tell the stories because you could have easily filled up 2 hours of telling stories about us and me and the rest of it. So, it's always a pleasure to talk to you too.
Yes. There's so many, just the flashbacks come so quickly.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Have you opened the package?
I did, yeah.
Do you know why?
No, that's
a question.
We were asking each other last night.
Question.
Yeah, please.
You must answer that mystery.
Okay. It was a travel Scrabble game. And
yes, we played Scrabble together all the time when we'd come to the house.
Yeah. All right. Wow, you're taking it back.
Cody and I would sit down. It was a quick game of Scrabble.
Yeah.
You were only going to be in the house for an hour, whatever.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Beautiful.
I never had to look up so many words that started that had Z in
it. Mom, I know you can't hear me, but it's true. Like the guy, I last night we're sitting around in the backyard and he's dropping words that I'm like, I got to Google that later or just kind of how's he using this in this conversation? Okay, that must mean this.
Oh, interesting.
Coming from the bad student he's so articulate, it's insane.
I appreciate that. But I love, and I was telling Brian too, the thing that was just amazing about it was just, it's wonderful just to even be thought about, that meant a lot. And then to get a gift was really lovely too. I want to thank you again.
I heard a statement several times now since I've gotten older that when you die when the last person speaks your name, the last time your name is said.
Well,
so
that's
I figured
good.
out an answer for that.
Well, you're going to be around a long time then.
Changed to, what's her name? Somebody's going to be saying that somewhere.
Hey, last night you said Scott thought his name was, hey, where's Brian?
Yeah, well,
kidding.
That was my name for years. Let's be honest. For years, it was like, hey, where's Brian? Like, hi, I'm good. How are you? Yeah. And then smile, enthusiastic. Yeah, but is he here? Listen, as an insecure, kid coming up, that was painful. But it was part of what made me more formidable when I got through on the other side.
And I'm sorry, it wasn't on purpose.
No, but
you just told me last night.
If I can't embrace those experiences to become who I am now, and I'm way happier about who I am as a man now, but without those experiences, I don't get to this place.
Right.
So
that's right.
With gratitude, I say all those things. And now they're sort of a funny thing I can look at.
Yes, anyway. You look back and enjoy your life. All those mistakes were on purpose.
Yeah, buddy.
Hey, Mama, we love you. Mama, we got to go. Scott is... This is the longest podcast I've ever been a part of. I'm kidding. Mama, I love you. Give Dad our love, okay?
Okay, I will.
All right, Mama. All right, bye.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
You know, one other thought I was going to say, that love what you do.
Thank you.
You know, and that's part of what you do, is you love what you're doing. I love going into class and talking about projects. I love seeing, for me, one of the greatest successes is watching when I stand back and look where a student started and where they end up. That to me is the success, the barometer that I get to judge that I've done things well. But the one thing I'm always making a point of is, don't just see it as laborious and work and, and exhausting, which it is. Mm-hmm. It is. I'm sorry, if you're going to have success, you're going to be doing some hard work, but allow yourself to enjoy those moments. Allow yourself to enjoy the relationships you have as part of that. Allow yourself to enjoy those things of creativity that sort of blossom for you. Don't be looking past, because often, and here's something I don't allow in my class, when you give notes, it should not be just critical and negative. You also have to be able to recognize what is working. You have to be able to recognize what is strong and what is good. What else are you building on? Right. You cannot build on just pointing out the negative stuff. No. And so it's a framing of how you think about things. And this is also an expression of our relationship and how you approach things too, is like, okay, what's the opportunity in this? What's the positive of this? Because that's the thing I want to build and have success with. And that's the thing that'll keep you moving forward and keep you engaged with it. And go make stuff, man. Right. Get those ideas down. Don't talk about it. Being a guy at Starbucks talking about it is not going to get you to where you want to go. Right. Be the person who's writing it down and making stuff. And I don't care what you have to shoot with or write on. If you only have a pen and piece of paper to write with, do that. If you only have your cell phone to shoot a movie on, do that. That's my advice to anybody who wants to go do it. Hit me up. I tell my students, we're going to have the same conversation about writing or making films in class as we would if we had Starbucks together, and this happens, true story, or if we run into each other at the grocery store. I'm going to have the same conversation with you regardless. I love it. Be that. I have my buddy, Scott Hartmann. I love you, dude. Love my you brother. Too, we're running long. This, as always. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So New York Film Academy, it's a professor, teacher. What is it? Well, we're in the midst of, right now, I'm like a senior directing instructor. There you go. I was an associate chair, but they're looking to give us professor titles coming up soon. So amazing. Amazing. Well, Scott Hartmann, go check him out. Thanks. And check out Mascots. I know it's an old film. It goes back from when you started, but we're going to be I'm putting it on you. We're finishing this feature film. Let's do it. Let's do it. All right. If you did it a year ago, it would be done now. Okay, let's do it. We're doing it. So I want to shout out Rock Rage Radio listeners out there. Thank you so much. My boy Chase, who has a show tonight. Well, it's going to be 2 weeks later, but he sold 2 nights out with his opera show tonight and Sunday night. Yes, sir. So unheard of in Las Vegas. Unheard of, but now we've heard it, as Scott said. Yeah, that's it. We've heard it. We've heard it, dude. Because Chase's opera show is sold out 2 nights in a row. And so, again, JPS Computers, thank you so much. And SMP Inc. My name is Brian Hopkins. Go out. Hopefully this has inspired you. It inspired me, and he's my friend. And I love you, dude. Thanks for listening to my story, man. You got it. I'm just another guy, honestly. I love it. So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk. Mad love. This is a Hero's Journey podcast. We're out. Dream, and I believe it's coming around. It's coming around to me.